Good evening, everyone. Dear investment professionals, financial analysts, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of the board of ABAF BVFA to the 62nd edition of Best Financial Communication Award. As you know, this award acknowledges those Belgian-listed companies that stand out in terms of both financial and non-financial communication. And this following an assessment by your peers and colleagues from the financial analyst community throughout Europe. According to good tradition, and some may be surprised, our chair, Hans Buijsen, would be here with us tonight to address you. But sadly, he was hospitalized a few days back and he cannot join us. However, I had him on the phone just recently, a few hours back. He's fine. He wishes all a great evening, and we all look forward to a speedy and full recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, after 2 digital or hybrid editions, we can finally meet again in person at this marvelous location, a hidden gem in the middle of Brussels, the former laboratory of Ernest Solvay. It is the very place where the inspiring Solvay journey started. For the second part of the award, we are honored to be invited in the Maison next door, and there will be the cocktail dinner. A digital awards ceremony like we had the last 2 years may have its perks, as some of you noticed, as to efficiency and access, and I'm talking not only about recurring traffic and parking challenges, but also in terms of our wider community having access to the information, but the possibility to meet each other in such a marvelous location offers a richness we cannot offer in any other format. A very warm thank you, therefore, to Solvay to give us the open to host this event and enjoy the cocktail dinner. Lastly, welcome to all analysts that helped us with the award, our board and our team for the continuous effort, the management of Belir and of Faiblefin Academy, the representatives from all stock-quoted companies, basically all people with whom we work closely and will do so even more in the future. Now, I would like to invite Karim Hadjar. He is the CFO of Solvay and awarded CFO of the year 2022 to the stage. Karim. Again, Karim, thank you for hosting us. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't know how many of you had a chance to visit this marvelous location, but it is definitely an honor. Karim, I would like to ask you something as to the award 2021. As you know, the award was given to you as a recognition, as an acknowledgement of your fellow colleagues, and specifically your colleagues asked us about, can you tell us a little bit more about Solvay? The future, its performances, and basically, as we are in a laboratory, what is the magic recipe to ensure that Solvay still continues to present outstanding results despite the current conditions?
A great IR team? No, it's probably a bit more than that, but thank you for the question and welcome. It's a real pleasure and a privilege to host you tonight. When we were awarded when the team was awarded last year and recognized, on the one hand, we felt very proud, really proud, very, very appreciative and grateful. And that's the truth. The other side of the question was, we also felt, at least I also felt, that it wasn't deserved. Because if I look back over the last year, 2 years, we've outperformed our peer group, but the value of Solvay's share is still not where it needs to be. I feel we'll deserve it when we are the right value. I'm talking to you now as an investor, not as a CFO. I'm not going to suggest there is a magic recipe. I will share with you that this particular journey started in 2019 when Ilham Kadri joined. And I've been with Solvay for 9 years, okay? So I've seen a major, major transformation. And I'm not going to say Ilham is magic sauce because ultimately, I think it's teams. Teams make the difference, without a doubt. You need more than that. You need clear strategic thinking. without a doubt, clear direction. You also need a performance culture where it's safe to be yourself. So there are many, many elements. You need to have the right innovation. You talked about Solvay was created here. So at the heart of Solvay is science, but you know what? It's innovation. And you're sitting today in the laboratory where Ernest Solvay created the soda ash process, which created Solvay. So we're sitting in the innovation heart of Solvay. So that to me is part of it, but I'm not going to suggest there's a magic sauce. But what I will say is that the last 3 years have been very, very exciting. We overachieved against the commitments we made strategically, so much so that we looked at ourselves last year and says, we've got to the rendezvous 2 years early, where do we go from here? And the answer became, we're going to split Solvay into 2, and it's called the power of 2. So we're doubling up on Solvay. And whilst I'm very proud of the IR team of Solvay, I'm going to need twice as many for both companies. But okay, that's part of the challenge.
So the score and the award in the award procedure was basically related to the way you are communicating with your financial analysts in terms of timely, detailed, consistent information, both in terms of intermediate as in terms of expected results. Maybe as a final question to conclude, how do you see the future of Solvay for the coming years?
Well, as an investor, very, very excited, but impatient. Very, very impatient to see the value being unlocked. But I also would like to say something that the IR team's impact is so critical. The CEO, the CFO, the leadership teams, if we can't convey, if we don't have the right ambassadors to convey clear, concise, transparent information that can be trusted, we can't function, we can't work. And the IR professional of today has skills. You need to be completely superhuman, in my eyes. You need to be a psychologist. You don't want to sell. You want to invite curiosity for people to buy into your company. You need to understand ESG. We've had an activist for 1.5 years. These are topics we're having to learn. We're having to appreciate the importance. So we're talking earlier about value, purpose in companies. So we can't stay in our spreadsheets and our financial world. It's key, but it's a question of balancing that with ESG purpose. And the IR professionals, to my mind, are the interface between the company and the providers of capital, debt and equity. And having the quality ambassadors with the right skills, psychological skills, as well as numerical skills, is key. So to my mind, am I confident that the best of Solvay is ahead of us? Absolutely. Why? Because the magic sauce and a great IR team. Thank you.
Thank you, Karim. Thank you for this introduction. Looking forward to seeing what the future will bring for Solvay. As you said yourself, the team is important, and the team is not always having a chance. So we brought a little gift on behalf of ABAF for your team, which you can celebrate together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, speaking of the future, since our relaunch a few years ago, ABAF BVFA found a new dynamic and actively prepares also for the future. And this in close collaboration with EFAS, that is our umbrella organization, the European Federation for Financial Analysts, where we continuously reflect about our priorities and the way how we can create added value for our members. And as such, we have developed again some new courses or actualize some existing training courses, and we'll also continue with the digitalization of our offer. So for 2023, we are going to launch the Digital Assets and MiCA program. This is focusing on blockchain technology and crypto assets in the framework of AML5. I doubt anyone who read the recent news would question the need for such type of courses. And we will soon communicate more information about this program via our website and the social media channels. Our CESCA, the Certified European ESG Analyst course, remains a true success. At the end of this year, we'll have more than 4,200 accredited professionals across the world. We also recently launched CESCA 3.1, and this includes new topics, especially into the fast-developing regulatory framework, or things such as responsible investing across asset class and ESG reporting. We just spoke about it. And all our accredited SEJA holders will receive a 1-month free access also to these new materials to allow also them to stay up to date. And if you are a professional who only requires an introduction into ESG, one of your new colleagues, they can also still enroll in our Digital Essential module. Lastly, we have also upgraded the CEFA, the Certified European Financial Analyst Program. Items such as IFRS 17 are now included in the Financial Accounting and Statement Analysis module. We engaged Professor Jan Longwell to present the Portfolio Management theory course. And as of next year, we have Professor Steven Tripstein for economics and Professor Wim van der Gieten for ESG will also join our team of high-level professional seasoned lecturers. To date, our CEFA course is a blended format. And we do that on purpose because we want to maximize the interaction between our students. But as of next year, and aligned with CESCA, we will also launch a fully digital CEFA course, the e-CEFA. And that will also allow candidates to take online standardized examinations as of spring 2023, obviously. This will enable us to welcome and accommodate also students or professionals living abroad or working abroad in a country without a national FS member association. From training to digitalization to proxy advisory. And that is the theme we have selected for tonight for our panel debate. And another example of how digitalization is impacting, changing inevitably, our industry and the services we provide. A warm welcome to Wim Allegaert, Chairman of Belir, who will be the moderator of tonight's panel debate. And that panel debate will be registered and also shared via our website and LinkedIn page to allow those not present, the digital version, to enjoy some insights. Thank you, Wim. The floor is yours.
Thank you. From Belir, I'm chair of Belir. Also, many thanks to ABAF for having us. Actually, the awards of ABAF are one of the most important elements for the IR community because it helps us to actually set the bar and to actually exchange best practices. So it's very insightful. Lots of listed companies are actually very eagerly waiting for the feedback and the insight, and it helps, of course, to raise the bar, as I just mentioned. Before we go to the exciting award part, we have a debate on proxy advisors, and obviously I'm not going to comment on that myself, but we have three knowledgeable speakers, so let me briefly introduce them. So can I invite on the stage Mr. Robert Gerritsen. Robert is VP at ISS, so he is very knowledgeable, obviously, about the topic, and his main focus is indeed corporate stakeholder engagement. So, Robert, very much welcome. Next to that, we have Jean-Louis de Hask. Jean-Louis is a senior member of the investment office at Bank Delen, and he basically drives the whole SRI policy making at the bank, amongst other things, so also very, very well deserved to be on the panel. And then last but not least, may I invite Mr. Dominique Gulson to the stage. Dominique is Group General Counsel and Corporate Secretary at Solvay. Before that, he had senior positions at Goodyear, Dow and Linklaters, so he is absolutely front row on the topic we want to discuss today. So also, Dominique, very much welcome to the panel. Obviously, we'll start with a very generic question to set the scene. And I'm going to ask that question to each and every one of the panel. It's basically, maybe for ISS, could you give a very brief definition of what you understand under proxy advice? And then also for the two other members of the panel, to what extent is the topic important for you and does it drive your actions?
Thank you, Wim, for the first opening question, and thank you for the organization and inviting us to the stage. and having the opportunity to explain what is proxy advisory and what ISS is doing in the market. So to start, ISS provides vote recommendations on general meetings, and more generally, ISS is helping and supporting investors making informed voting decisions. And we do that through providing data, we do that providing research, and the vote recommendation service that we do. And lastly, what we also provide investors is the sort of the execution of the votes into the voting chain to the companies. But I think very important to mention here is that the voting decision itself cannot be outsourced to ISS or to a service provider. That's something that investors, our clients, still do through our platform, and something that we don't do on behalf of our clients. Yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would like to thank ABAF as well for having me, because I'm not an ABAF alumnus, I'm a Leuven alumnus, so I think extra points on diversity and inclusion for ABAF tonight. But now, joke apart, voting is quite important, of course. It's key to our investment in sustainability policy. We try to have dialogue with every company we have in portfolio. We don't do that alone. We do that with a partner as well, because, okay, with Dell and Private Bank, but it's 35 billion now we manage in Belgium. But that's not enough on a world scale. So we have a partner that does that for us. It's Hermes EOS. That's a partner that manages, well, 1,500 billion in assets under advice, and they help us to engage and have dialogues with all companies we have in portfolio on sustainability issues. And what enables that? It enables long-term view, and that's where we're in for. Because maybe when you just focus on financial insights, it's a little bit more short-term. With the sustainability insight, with the engagement, the dialogue, and I think dialogue is very important before to vote, because voting only is sometimes just a shortcut. It's very important to have that long-term view.
Thank you. Pleasure to be on the panel. I'm bringing probably more an inside view from a company's perspective. I'm trying to look at it in a way as to how we at Solvay have had some experiences with proxy advisors, which are obviously critical players in the financial world today. And I believe as important and as financial actors as IR, shareholders, activism, NGOs. I mean, we see more and more actors coming in. And I think it's an important aspect to take into account. Another aspect, proxy advisors' independence in terms of their critical reviews is key. But independence requires also curiosity and factual knowledge and understanding of the institutions they will talk about, because their influence is growing also in terms of market influence, shareholders' influence. It's becoming so complex that proxy advisors have a critical role to play. And I think that's really something we are focusing on and trying to take at heart, not only in ticking the box and responding, but really getting the understanding of what proxy advisors are looking on, because they can influence us. But at the same time, we're expecting proxy advisors to understand the complexity of companies we're having today. And just as a matter of example, we went through times recently also with activism. We've had situations where I believe proxy advisors need to really get the curiosity, get into the details of the understanding. It cannot just be seen from the outside, hence a very close dialogue. And together with my colleague, Karim, we are looking really in creating those dialogues, in creating the links, yet the independence of the proxy advisors is critical and remains as a key aspect of the whole position of a proxy advisor.
Yeah, Thank you. Yeah,
So I'm getting a little bit already in some of the topics.
Yeah, but you're clearly hinting towards, and the subtitles are, dialogue is important. Actually, it's a tendency which is here to stay, which is on the rise. So it's far more a question, how do we deal with it? Whether far more than can we avoid it or can we minimize it? So dialogue is absolutely key. How do you look at that trend? How would you like to interact with companies? Both on the investment side, because they are basically your clients, to put it like that, but also on the company, the listed company side, who are often the subject of your analysis.
Yeah, this is, I think, a key question, and there are two answers. Maybe to start on our client side, and sort of the tendency for investors to increasingly hire or outsource the research that they need to do on voting. And that's the trend that we see, and that's maybe mainly regulatory driven, is that investors increasingly need to vote their own view and their own perspective. And so what you see is that they less trust or less use ISS's services in terms of the benchmark or ISS house view, but increasingly ask ISS to give vote recommendation on the basis of their own view. And this is something that we cater. And I think it's important to mention that maybe 1/3 of our clients has a customized voting policy with ISS, but it represents more or less 80 to 90% of the votes that we process through our vote execution services. So it's really the largest investors that have a house-made policy with us and that vote their own view and their own perspectives. And I think that's key. And we only see this trend increasing, really, that investors turn to us to get recommendations based on their own view. And maybe a scoop, actually, is that earlier this week, and I don't want to do too much marketing here for ISS, but we introduced a service called Vote Preference, which basically means that asset managers can sort of, via our platform, allow their underlying clients to vote their customized views. So what we see really in that trend is that investors increasingly vote their own view, their own perspectives, and make up their own minds in terms of how they would like to see the recommendations, and less on sort of how ISS sees the world, especially as the ISS benchmark view, in my opinion, is a bit conservative on a number of ESG aspects. Yeah, and then maybe on the second part of the question on engagement and dialogue with companies, this is something that we really value, to be able to understand companies, to understand the detail, to understand how companies work. So we're very eager to speak to companies, to understand which resolutions are on the AGM agenda. We prefer engagement and more constructive engagement in the months of, let's say, September to December, and mainly because AGMs are mainly held in spring. But we continue to talk to companies in the spring as well, to understand really the AGM agenda, resolutions that are on the agenda, and sort of the legal concepts. So we continue to do that, as well as that we share drafts of our reports with companies so that they can double check the reports and fact check the reports.
Is that recognizable, for example, from the investor side, that either you can follow their advice, or you say, no, this is the way we want to vote, and we just want you to execute this?
I think that's very important, and companies have to be aware that it's the last step in general that you have with the company. You should have had that dialogue beforehand, and voting is just a result of a dialogue, and sometimes you have to vote against some agenda points, meeting points, because you didn't get what you wanted from the company. So it's very, that dialogue is still key, but voting is like an extra nudge you could have with the company. I had the discussion internally. We had to vote on a very international company, UK listed, and we voted against the chairman of the remuneration committee. And it was not because of the remuneration itself, and it was not because of the person himself. He was very capable, but he had 3 years to have more diversity in his board, and it's for a very international company, so it's not a local one. So plenty of people to choose of, and when you arrive at the voting, you just say, okay, there is only UK people in your board. Why couldn't you have a woman in the board or someone from another continent, etc., etc. So that's the very last step you have, and then you vote against, and then that person reacts or the company reacts. Say, okay, isn't that person capable? They said no, but the dialogue was there. So the combination of both is still very key. But companies have to accept that sometimes as an asset manager or as an investor, you want things to change, and it's not because you want to tick the box of diversity and inclusion. You know that diversity just adds value, it broadens your network, so it adds value to the company as well. So that's, I think, how we see it.
Yeah. And as a listed entity, also on the dialogue part, is it, if you put it black and white, is it more important to have an open conversation about those topics with ISS, or an open conversation with investors or with large investors, probably a bit of both, but how do you deal with that?
I think you alluded to it. I mean, you need to do it with the different actors. Mm-hmm. Now, proxy advisors themselves have a critical role, because even if their voting recommendation is not followed by the institutional investors, they will still listen, look at it, refer, probably also to the insights you have gained in terms of trying to explain also how a proxy advisor is looking at a company, what is important. And companies are listening to proxy advisors as well, because they are representing the market. They give us the trends, the expectations. And companies have to evolve. You're rightly saying, it's not enough to just say we have diversity. There needs to be a consistent effort to develop those new concepts, which leads us now, for example, to ESG aspects. Now, proxy advisors should not limit themselves just on the G, on the governance, because if that's the case, I don't think we will help each other, nor the society. I think there is a demand on companies to evolve. And if you want to make the difference as a company, you need to be at the forefront. You need to be creative. But to be creative, it needs to be also understood. And proxy advisors are there to get the information, get into the details in order to understand. The biggest hurdle we may have is if we don't have enough of that dialogue, because the world is evolving so fast that today you may have regular discussions with the analysts and provide a little bit the trends, the criteria we want to develop over the years. But there are sometimes situations which are evolving in a matter of months, in a matter of short time. And the advisors who are deciding on the votings are not necessarily the same to whom you talk. That's already one aspect where I believe we could improve the situation by having a more consistent view, and also check before issuing, the votings, are there anything which has impacted the company in the very recent time? Those are dialogues which are, I would say, a little bit different according to the proxy advisors. Some are a little bit more open. With ISS, we can have a dialogue. Also, shortly before the annual meetings, it's working. Yeah. With Glass Lewis, it's a little bit more closed. And it's not to say it's bad or good, but we need to secure the situation. We have had a situation where there was misunderstandings as to what we were writing in our reports, sometimes driven by local circumstances or jurisdictional requirements, which seen from abroad, seen from far away, not knowing necessarily the Belgian environment, was perceived as being negative or not in line with the expectations, until we were able to explain, this is the law. We cannot change it. It was in terms of a remuneration aspect. We've seen the same with regard, on activism. It evolved so fast that we needed to provide updates, which required, even shortly before the annual meetings, also some dialogues. And I think that's the important part, where we need to make efforts to maintain, not only during the times, September to December or early in the year, but also later on and shortly before the meetings, before you make your final decisions, having a chance to interact. And I think that's really where I believe we we see it very positively, but there's room for improvement.
Yeah. Just to follow up on that one, very often topics are very often linked to ESG, and probably the perception can exist that it's probably most on G and then a bit less on S and E. So the question is, who's the best party to talk to in a listed company? Is it, for example, is it the general counsellor? Is it IR? Is it the chairman of the board? Can you share your view on that one?
As Karim said before, it's a collective approach. Today, you cannot segment anymore and saying there's one person who covers on the E, one person covers on the S, one person covers on the financials. The complexity of the world we're living is requiring that starting from the highest end with the CEO and the executive team to have a good understanding on not only the performance but also the outlook. And when it comes to very specifics, the IR team is I would say, the orchestrator, the coordinator to get the right persons in the dialogue. And today, we do have on ESG aspects our ESG leader. I'm participating as a lawyer. I'm not an IR specialist, but I mean, there are legal aspects we discuss. There are obviously the financial expertise which are there. And depending on the complexities we have, we will bring in the right person to get the right response. Because the demand is also to get more specific, not just general. And it's a matter, how do you build the future? What are you doing? What are the trends you're having? And we have our, for Solvay, the One Planet strategy, which is driven by the CEO, by the board, by the CEO and the executive team. But the team around has to make it happen. And those are the persons you need to talk to because they know the details and they need to be involved.
Yeah. And it can pivot around an IR department, but of course you need to bring in experts.
Sure.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that for proxy advisors, from an investor perspective, that there's probably more focus on G than there is on E and S, or is that a false accusation?
I don't know if it's an accusation. I think it's just the way things work, and on a general meeting agenda, you just have those governance topics. You don't have in general other topics. It's more shareholder resolutions that can appear. So it's pushed by shareholders themselves, and then you have social or environmental topics. But the topics provided by the company in general are just governance issues. Though that's maybe the thing that could evolve. I know, for example, Total has promised to put their CO2 reduction program every 3 years on their general meeting and to have a vote on that. So it's evolving. So it's like Dominique said. I think you have to embrace the whole spectrum and not just one part of it. And everything makes it a company, and especially the environmental outlook you have. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I can see that. Also, I came across, for example, some asset managers who invest according to ESG principles, and then specifically on E, they say, well, this is the minimum bar that the company has to adhere to, and if that's not the case, I'm simply not investing. So obviously, you cannot proxy advise on E things because you're simply not a shareholder. Well, for G or S, that's probably a bit different. Is it more G or S or E?
No, it's a good introduction in terms of a development that we are seeing. Yes, you have a general meeting agenda, mainly focused on governance items still. But what we see is that many clients of us, they actually want to hold boards accountable for not doing enough, for example, on climate or on sustainability reporting. So irrespective of the AGM agenda and which items are on there, they like to address the re-election of a chairman, for example, or of a governance committee or an ESG committee if that exists, or even the discharge or adoption of annual accounts in case a company doesn't do enough on climate. And that's something that we see across the board from many investors. This is also reflected in our policy guidelines since this year. It's still very limited, so we only target climate 100 plus companies for not setting any target, so irrespective of what type of target. So it moves very slowly, again, because from an ISS perspective, we like to cater the market, and we look on where the consensus sits. So we would like to, with our benchmark policies, cater as much investors as possible. So it's moving very slowly, especially because US investors are maybe a bit less interested in climate accountability instead of European investors. And so we're moving from an ISS perspective quite slowly. But if we look at how European investors are updating their policy guidelines with us, so their customized voting policies, this is really directed towards holding boards accountable beyond just what is on the AGM agenda. And that includes climate reporting, target setting, net zero commitments, and so on.
Yeah, clear. Maybe there are questions from the audience as well. There's obviously room to ask questions, if there are any.
I may want just to, if you don't mind, just
Sure.
Get to some of the points, and then we'll get to the questions, if you don't mind. Perceptions. ESG, for example, there are a lot of different views today. I mean, the market is evolving, as you're saying. We're not there yet. The rating agencies are not there. There's a lot of room to maneuver. The difficulty I find, which is especially for proxy advisors, is to remain factual and not to get too much influence by individuals, activists, as we've seen on our side, who've really tried to influence, but it was not grounded, it was not factual. And how do you make the difference? How do you get to the factual elements which are really critical? Because the role of the proxy advisors is so important. It influences the shareholders. If there is a wrong perception or a wrong statement of factual elements which are leading more to perceptions, that is sometimes the challenges we're facing. And we're trying, how do we make sure we can help you to understand what the reality is? Because independently, you will need to make your recommendations. But it requires probably even more attention than in the past to get into details on the short, but also on the long-term basis, because ESG is not the short term. It's really the long term, as you said before. Sorry, I wanted to bounce on the comments.
And I agree with you, but I think now that there are some European initiatives as well, like CSRD, that will help to have more data available and to have more, factual dialogues, and not just saying, okay, that's my moral compass, my personal compass, and I'm trying to push the company in my direction that I want. No, I have facts, and some numbers are good or bad or whatever, and I want to push the company in a certain way. Yeah.
So need for frameworks will definitely help, just like you have on board diversity and that kind of stuff. So I can see that, and that's the kind of benchmark that you're looking for, to have an objective debate. Yeah. I see there's a question over there on the second row.
Thank you, Rudy van Dorpen, ING. I remember 20 years ago I worked for an asset manager, and we already did proxy voting 20 years ago. What has changed? How has been the evolution? How did you feel that?
What has changed a lot is the complexity of what we see on AGM agendas, and I think overall the complexity. So I think companies recognize the role that we have as proxy advisors, how we serve the market and how we serve investors. And on their turn, they have disclosed a lot more information which we need to deal with, so that there's a lot more complexity, a lot more information that companies or investors can use to make informed voting decisions. And I also think that the dialogue between companies and proxy advisors has increased substantially, not only prior to the AGM, but also more constructively throughout the year. I think those are two elements. So disclosure, as well as the dialogue, has changed a lot.
I think as a local asset manager, I wasn't there 20 years ago. I was still 18 years ago. I was there, but not 20. But I think it's getting more global. So you have more access to voting, to be able to vote. You could go to Solvay, or you could go to another Belgian company as a smaller asset manager, but you couldn't go worldwide. So I think that's an evolution, and something that's asked of you, because you have a responsibility, or you're more like becoming an asset owner, and so I think that's an evolution I see the last few years. Yeah.
including on the expectations. You know, international standards are pushing also the proxy advisors in the different jurisdictions to adjust to the highest standards. So there is a push upwards, which is also for companies to meet the highest standards when they are engaging into new standards and new approaches. And I think that's something which has evolved in the last years tremendously.
I had one question. All of you mentioned that at some point in time also shareholder activism, which you could throw into the same bin as proxy advisors or not. Is that like a more serious degree of proxy advisors, or do you consider that to be something totally different?
Well, Dominique, please.
It's certainly different.
Yeah.
It's certainly different because the agenda of an activist is to try to reach his own objectives, which may not necessarily be objective criteria. But you cannot ignore them because they make noise, they have influence, they may have influence on some shareholders. You need to listen. You need to also take them into account. And I would say, you know, we talked about the ESG rating agencies, you're talking about NGOs, you're talking about activism, you're talking about institutional investors. You have, and this is also an evolution compared to 20 years ago, you have more, I would say, parties to talk to. You need to engage. It requires a huge effort for companies. It requires also the right IR team because those are the people who knows best how to approach those different stakeholders. And then inside the company, you need to dedicate time, efforts to respond. It's not good enough to have good numbers. You need to engage, you need to explain, you need to position the company, you need to position the companies according also to expectations which may be different. An activist has different expectation maybe than a proxy advisor. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm inclined to think that, like for proxy advisors, you can be proactive on that one. You can enter into the dialogue. You can set up the debate. While for shareholder activism, you're probably a bit more pushed into the reactive side. Do you see them coming? Can you prepare? Can you use some of these similar approaches, or is it?
I mean, you cannot generalize. An activist has obviously his agenda. What we have seen in Europe, and we see it, I would say, compared to the US, you have probably more focus on the ESG aspects than in the US, which is more financially driven. So it's a slightly different perspective. Yet, you cannot ignore them, even if it's one person. How do you engage will very much depend on the activist, will very much depend on the rationale, on the arguments, and I would say probably takes more time and more efforts. It's more disruptive because you don't want to be just in the reactive mode. You also want to move forward and solve a potential issue, perception, or sometimes objectives, which may be sometimes unrealistic, but which can have a lot of consequences on the company because it may have an influence on the shareholders. It may have an influence on the public perception. It may have, and sometimes even if the arguments on the other side are not correct, over time, it triggers into the mind of, you know, investors who say, well, there's something, you know, problematic.
Yeah, influential, yeah. Unless there's a last question from the audience, I would ask to each and every one of you, like, what would be the main message in terms of proxy advising that you can share with the audience of both analysts and IR professionals?
Yeah, the comparison between activists and proxy advisors, I mean, is apples with pears or apples with lettuce even. It's completely different, and the dynamic is completely different. But that aside, I think important for today is that proxy advisors are there to support investors. And while we have our role to play, and of course we have a certain level of influence, I think it remains key that companies continue to talk to their investors and hear what they have to say about their company, instead of only listening to proxy advisors and what we have to say. At the end of the day, and like I started with, it is investors that take the decision on how to vote. They execute their voting rights, and we support them. So I think that's a key takeaway from me for today.
Yeah, for us it's in the same line, but more to complement. It's focus on dialogue, and the activism is maybe more disruptive. But having that focus on dialogue and having that long-term view, thanks to a sustainability policy, the sustainability policy should be more integrated in the financial analysis as well. I think that's something is going to happen in the years to come. I'm sure of that, and I'm hearing that ABAF is preparing that as well. So that would be the key takeaway. It's getting that sustainability into the financial realm, and to take that long-term view that sustainability adds, and so dialogue and voting to the financial analysis.
Yeah, I think I'm joining my colleagues, and certainly I'm not trying to mix activism with proxy advice. I said from the beginning it's very different, but it's something to take into account. Yeah, dialogues, definitely. And not just dialogue in the, I would say, normal times, but also, once you've issued or you have your understanding on how to move forward, to check and to make sure that the facts are really confirmed. And I would say, just for us as a company, it is required to take time, efforts, because dialogue is not just a short meeting. It's to help demonstrate and explain what a company is doing in order to build the future. And that's something which is important, taking the time, and for proxy advisors to understand what direction, and not just look at the maybe 1 quarter, 1 results, but what is really the perception, what is really the journey to create what it wants. Is it effective? Is it truly implementing it? Is there a trend in the direction which is moving in the right direction? And I think that's something today where we together can work effectively to help the investors understand how a company is moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, I learned a lot today. So indeed, activism, shareholder activism, is not proxy advising. It's something totally different. Proxy advising is very present. It's something that needs to be taken up by IR, even if it's a pivotal role that you take on. But it's definitely an additional stakeholder on your stakeholder map of all parties that you try to enter into dialogue with. So I would like to thank the members of the panel very much for sharing their thoughts. And I think now is the time to invite Luc van der Elst on the stage for the most exciting part of the night.
Thank you, Wim. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your support and your cooperation. I mean, as you can imagine, this annual task of screening the communication practices of so many companies, it's a very big task, and we cannot do that alone. We need a lot of help. We want the results also to be as representative as possible. So yes, we have been knocking on many doors a few months ago. And I'm again happy to say that there was quite a nice positive response again. no less than 59 people were ready to help us with this annual exercise, which of course makes us very happy. And that also allows us to screen these communication practices of some 50 companies, or 49 to be precise this year. And that is 19 companies from the BEL 20 index and 30 companies from the mid and small cap segment. We added a few names compared to last year's. We added Smart Photo, we added Atenor. So this is a dynamic list, it is moving, it's not static. And we hope to be able to continue in that way for the years to come. Now, a short reminder of the procedure. So early September, we sent out a survey, a questionnaire, to those 59 analysts and fund managers. Every survey, every questionnaire consists of some 25 individual questions spanning different fields of financial communication. The scores that could be given ranged from excellent, okay, nothing to improve, let's say, over, yeah, okay, quite good, to not so good, or as we call it, please improve. And then somewhere in October, we add up all the individual scores and we can start making up the rankings. That's how it works. Very importantly, and something I really wanted to stress also, is that at the end of each survey, the participant has to put in some comments. He has to write some text. He is asked to give at least 3 comments, 3 ideas, 3 suggestions to improve the practices of that specific company. If he doesn't do that, the results cannot be uploaded. So that, of course, we do because it's very important for the companies to get this feedback, to know what is maybe not so good, what they could improve in their financial communication. That allows me to go to the next part, and that is what you used to us discussing and showing examples of best practices in financial communication. This year we have chosen to take a slightly different approach. We've been plowing through all these individual comments from all these companies, or all these analysts on these different companies, several hundred. And I made a selection of all those quotes, and we will show some of these quotes. We have ordered them in a specific way, we have grouped them in a specific way, and that allows us then to go into some discussions on best practices. So the first set of quotes that I would like to present, and you will see them appearing on the screen one by one, and I will give a short comment. The first quotes are on forward-looking information, everything that has to do with strategy, looking a number of years into the future, shorter term also, guidance for the current year. Things that have to do with updating events, updating the analyst community on future events that are important for the analyst, like annual meetings or dividend payments or analyst meetings. So we have grouped a number of quotes here, and the first one is, as you can see, I hope everyone can read it. It's about the way, I can read that. You can make the analyst's life on busy reporting days easier by including the previous outlook in the outlook statement. I first came across this practice some 15 years ago when I was looking at Atlas Copco, who gave guidance, a qualitative guidance, not a quantitative one, but a qualitative guidance every quarter. And every quarter again, they updated their guidance and compared it with the previous guidance. So that allowed the analyst to see if there was a change in the guidance. I think that was a good practice. Of course, this is only if you start giving guidance at the start of the year, and when you updated it later during the year, I think it's a good practice to show if there is a difference compared to the previous guidance. Next quote. Giving guidance is one thing, talking about strategy is another thing. I think it's also important to show or to convince and try to convince the analyst or the investor how you want to achieve the guidance, how do you want to achieve your future results. Try to convince the analyst of the steps you will take, the actions that you will take to reach your future goals. I think there's work to do on that level, not just launching financial targets, but also telling a bit more about how you want to achieve those targets. Next quote, please. Actually, these are all comments, all quotes from the surveys that we got from the service. Of course, we don't put the name of the analyst here on the screen. We don't put the name of the company on the screen. Some of the quotes are my own, so this is my way to tell you what I find important. I'm not going to say which ones, but no, they come from a variety of analysts. This one is not mine, to be clear. Visibility on the full year outlook always remains limited. Would prefer to have some more concrete targets. This is about qualitative guidance and quantitative guidance. Of course, quantitative guidance is more telling, is more concrete, is a bigger help for the analyst who is making his models and his financial forecasts. So whenever it's possible to give an actual number or a range, also very nice, give a range rather than a qualitative comment, that is something that is preferred by many of the analyst community. Next quote, please. Please add profitability or indication of profitability in the trading updates. Some companies have stopped producing full quarterly results, went back to trading updates. Okay, we can understand why that decision has been taken. We still prefer full quarterly results, obviously, but I think what we want to mention here is that it could be misleading to give an idea of how your top line is evolving if that is not in line with how your margins are evolving. If your top line is doing well, but your margins are shrinking, you could give the wrong message and people could misunderstand or misinterpret the message that you are giving. If there is a discrepancy between how your top line is doing and how your profit numbers are doing. So just try to avoid these kind of misunderstandings. Next quote. Yes, just something that we have witnessed. Most companies have a calendar with upcoming events. They usually can be found on the website, but it's always a good thing to also put them in the press releases when you are reporting results or any other relevant event. Or you can also put this calendar on or in this press release. So to wrap up these quotes that have to do with forward-looking information, I think we can now proceed to the first award of the evening. That is the award for forward-looking information. That will appear, yes. And we have prepared the rankings. You can read the names on the screen. We have a ranking top 5 for the BEL 20 companies and a similar ranking for the mid and small cap companies. And you can read yourself, the highest score comes from WDP. So WDP is this year's winner of the award for best forward-looking information. Okay, I think we have a representative of WDP in the room. Yes, Mr. Makar. Okay. Congratulations. Congratulations. We will take some pictures after, at the end of the evening. Okay? Okay. Hi. Great. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Okay, we can go now to the second set of quotes, and these quotes have to do with investor relations. Very important to all the IR representatives in the room, of course. First quote is, yes, someone is smiling. I smiled myself when I saw this. Sometimes tro is te veel. It's about preparing consensus numbers, and which is actually a very good practice, I find myself. So I'm very much in favor of gathering consensus numbers prior to the publication of financial results. But if you ask for numbers to the analyst community just prior to the publication, and then again you ask their new number after the publication, for some people this is too much, just too much. So maybe you have to take that up with the analysts covering you, but just asking for the consensus numbers or the forecast prior to the publication of results could be enough. Next quote, please. Okay, that's two. If we can go back to the second one, it's consensus data to be made available on the website. Gathering consensus numbers is one thing. Maybe you can distribute them to the analysts who prepared the forecast and allowed you to make the consensus. But it's also important, and we are quite strict on that, to make them public by putting them on your website so that they are there for everyone to see. I think that is a very good practice. And then the third one, as we can already see on the screen, also on what we consider to be investor relation practices, that is the publication of non-financial, not related to financial results, ad hoc press releases. Could be on M&A or on something else, something relevant for the company. Quite some companies, I think, maybe sometimes forget to make public some announcements like on M&A or maybe big investments, whatever, important strategic issues or related to management issues. I think there are more things that you can say as a company next to announcing the 6 monthly results. So this is a comment that we also came across and that I think is worthwhile mentioning. Please don't forget the non-financial ad hoc press releases. Next quote, please. And then we go to the website and look for a press release, and we cannot find them. Because if you do, if you buy back, if you're in the process of buying back your own stock and you have weekly communication on the stocks that you have bought. So sometimes the press release that you are looking for is snowed under, as this analyst has said, by the press releases on the share buybacks. There's an easy solution for that. You just put these press releases on share buybacks in a different spot, and that allows the analyst to very quickly find the actual press release that he or she is looking for. Next one. We miss an Investors' Day, also part of good investor relations practices, something that is becoming more popular, and we will talk more about Investor Days in a few minutes. So if you do not organize an Investor Day, you don't have to do that every year, but every 2-3 years could be very helpful. Then you might get some analysts who are not very happy. So try to think about organizing an Investor Day, let's say every 2 or 3 years. That would be very good practice and very well received by the analysts. Next one. And if you do organize an Investor Day, don't forget to report about it, to talk about it, to show the presentations that you have prepared. So this analyst knew there was something going on, but he could not find the material he was looking for, and he did not get an invitation. So this analyst was not very happy, although he was on the distribution list. So if you do the effort of organizing an Investor Day or a Capital Markets Day, do this extra effort to invite all the people who could have a professional interest in attending this day. Next one. related to the previous one. So there was a time when almost exclusively sell-side analysts were invited for these events. I think those years are long behind us. So don't forget to invite other people like buy-side or maybe even sell-side people, maybe even salespeople who could be interested to be there. There's always room, I think, for an extra chair. That is something that you should not forget. Okay, next one. Also one that made me smile a little bit. Of course, we are living in a new world, the post-COVID world. 3 years ago, we would have said, what? What is this? Yeah, even have to go to Brussels for a meeting. No, we don't want that anymore. We want the virtual meetings. Of course, there are different opinions. I think it's important to have a good mix. In any case, this was not the best solution to organize something in Brussels for this particular analyst. Maybe also something you have to discuss with the analysts covering you to see what could be the best way to organize such an event. I think this wraps it up as far as the investor relations related codes are concerned. So that is the moment to go to the second award of the evening, which is the award for best investor relations. Same process. So we have prepared the rankings, first of all, for the BEL 20 companies, Umicore, KBC, UCB, Elia, and Solvay. Always very good communication practices, investor relations people. But did they win the award? You see in the mid and small cap segment, and the number one there has very close call, But yes, indeed, also small companies can excel in good investor relation practices. So we are very happy to award this prize to the people from Kinepolis. I think they are present in the room. We have Eddie Duquesne, I see. And we have Tino Duck. Ah, okay, well, good. Congratulations. We make pictures afterwards. Huh? Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Well done. Okay. Okay, see you. We have talked about investor relations. We have talked about Capital Markets Day. Since, I think, 2 or 3 years, we decided to introduce a new kind of award, a rotating award. I remember the first one was, I think, about specific risks, not related to the market, but related to a specific company or a sector. Last year, we had an award for best holding company or investment company. And this time, together with Belir, we decided that it could be a good idea to give an award to that company, having reached a very high appreciation for having organized a Capital Markets Day. Capital Markets Day, in the broad sense, could be a field trip, could be a webinar on a specific division or a specific topic. So that's why we also asked the participants in this survey to give an appreciation on the organization of a Capital Markets Day, if any, because not all companies have organized one in the last year. Or in this case, we asked them appreciation for a Capital Markets Day organized in the past 2 years. So we include this kind of initiatives taken this year and last year. actually, obviously, to broaden the scope. The feedback was very positive. We got a lot of high scores for all those companies that have organized such an event. And we can see on the next slide which companies got the highest appreciation for having organized such an event. And that is the next one. You can see all the logos and the names of the companies. How did we choose a winner here? Well, we presented these names to a panel, a jury, and they then selected not one, but two companies having gotten the highest score, the highest appreciation. And those companies will be highlighted in a second or two. We're waiting for the video to catch up. And those two companies are D'Ieteren and Argenix. D'Ieteren organized a very nice Capital Markets Day. I think it was in April this year. A new strategy, having done a lot of important acquisitions. Presenting themselves as an investment company with all the management teams from the different participations present and presenting their ambitions, their forecasts, their strategy. That was very well received by the participants. And also Argenix, in this case, it was more like an R&D day. Not this year, but last summer, I think it was. Not the stuff that you and I understand well, because it's very specific. It's very much linked to the processes of finding new medications, new drugs. But anyway, this was very well appreciated by the specialist biotech analysts who were present. So that is why Argenix also came out ex aequo with D'Ieteren, winners of the best award for Capital Markets Day. I think we have representatives of both companies present, at least I hope so. We have Stéphanie Voisin and Joke Comijn, if I'm right. Yes? Okay. Two ladies. Congratulations. Congratulations. Well done. Okay. Pictures later. Okay, then I think there are two awards left. The one but last is an award for best mid and small cap company. I think this allows us, this specific award, and it exists already for many years, allows us to really appreciate or be appreciative of the efforts done by the companies that often do not have the same budgets for communication and investor relations. So that's why we chose to have this specific award for mid and small cap companies. We can start with the next one and again also show the ranking of the best 5 companies that came out of the survey. In the rankings, top 5, obviously only mid and small caps. It's Ontex, CPF, Barco, Shurgard, and the winner is Telenet. Well done, Rob. Of course, he used to be Bell 20, so maybe ambitions to go to the Bell 20 section again, but in any case, well done, Rob. Okay, so that leaves us with only one to go, the overall award for Best Financial Communication 2022. Go to the next one. We have the quotes. We still have some quotes, of course. Yes, Oh, okay. We do the ranking first. We do the ranking first. Sorry, it's my fault. There are a number of quotes that I wanted to present and that I did not do. So yes, for the overall ranking, it is again Telenet who is coming out on top with a nice margin. Well done. Okay, great job, Rob.
Thank you. Can you hear me without the mic? Or?
Maybe I ask first if we can go to some of the quotes that I prepared, but and then afterwards we ask Rob to say a few words. Okay, just wanted to show you some more quotes because actually this is also what it's all about. The best practices that we wanted to discuss a little bit. Data per share. It's obvious for most of the companies to present some relevant numbers like earnings per share, but not everyone does it. And if you do it, don't forget to mention or to actually show the number of shares that you have used in your per share calculations or your per share numbers. Maybe you have done a capital increase. There were new shares issued. Have you taken into account the total number of new shares? Have you used a weighted average? That, of course, can have a difference. So just put the number of shares that you have used in your communication. Next one. Also seems very obvious, but still a lot of companies do not follow this. You have presented half-year results, then why not, if you publish your full-year results, show the half one and the half two numbers? That is a big help for analysts. They can see how results have trended during that transition from H1 to H2. And if there is a seasonal impact, that can be the case, just show the semester, the 6-month results and compare them to the similar 6-month period of the year before. I think for me it's very obvious. It makes our lives a lot easier if you present numbers in that way. So please, if you do not do this already, this is a very nice tip for next year. Actually, this is one of mine. Okay, next quote. More info about competitive environment, also something that comes back quite often. We get a lot of information on the top line, how it has done, and on the earnings numbers, but in between you have maybe something to say. You could increase transparency on why profit numbers have improved or have deteriorated. Is it because of you have to pay more for raw materials? What about staff costs could be relevant? Energy costs, insurance costs, depending on the nature of your business and the sector that you work in. So please don't forget to be clear on every relevant cost that determines where your earnings are ending up. Next one. Yeah, actually, that's with this one. Next one. Free cash flow. Very happy to say that we find more and more mentioning and even definitions of free cash flow and free cash flow in the press releases. Of course, very relevant for us as financial analysts. Just one remark, you might not just give the definition of cash flow or free cash flow, but also the reconciliation. Actually show how you have put the numbers together to come to a cash flow or free cash flow number. It's a non-IFRS metric, we know, but it's a very relevant one. So please try to increase the transparency on this cash flow numbers. Next one. This one is for holdings or investment companies. It's about information that we get on your participations. Well, if you are a very diversified holding company with a lot of smaller stakes in a lot of companies listed, then of course there's no issue, there's no problem. But sometimes you only have a limited number of participations, unlisted ones, so more difficult for us to find the relevant information. If you could provide more clarity, more transparency on those relevant participations, that could be very helpful. And the last one also about holdings and investment companies, the last quote. Non-listed assets do not make it easy to report a net asset value. Clear. It's much easier if you're only invested in listed assets. But you can try and make an effort and come up with a fair number. If you show how you have come to this number, what multiples maybe you have used, sector multiples, peer multiples, market multiples, I think there's no problem. We can accept the fact that there can be some discussion about what the exact fair value is. But please do the effort. That can also make the life of the analyst and the investor a lot easier. And finally, I think I wanted to share with you some of the quotes that also brought a smile to my face. Like this one. If you think that no one is reading your annual report, well, think again. This analyst, he or she, found something that is not right on page 132. I didn't look it up. I don't know what it is. I even forgot the name of the company. Yeah, I'll leave it as it is, but thought it was quite funny. Next quote. A little bit touchy. I think if I ask anyone in the room, did this quote come from you? I don't think anyone would raise his finger, but so what are they doing? So many people in the board, what are they doing? Okay, next one. This is a comment made on a real estate company. Be more open about things that are going wrong. It's not only just about bringing a good news show, but certainly, and that is always the case, according to this analyst in real estate, there's always something going wrong. So be transparent and just don't stop talking about the good things. And then the next one, sometimes just analysts say, well, everything is fine. I have nothing to add. Everything is prima. And to wrap it up, some even send us a lot of kisses. So sorry for not presenting them before. I was a little bit confused. So I think now it's time to give the opportunity to Rob Goyens to say a few words.
Thank you, Luc. Thanks also to Solvay for hosting this great award event. First of all, I was a bit surprised when Luc told me to be here tonight, because it would be a special occasion. Because when you look at the share price performance of Telenet, it has been a bumpy ride over the last year and a half.
And today.
And even today. Thank you, Luc. Thank you. So you see there is no correlation between share price performance and winning an award. What I can say is that we won it once already in 2015, but then the circumstances were clearly different. So the ride of the last year has been very bumpy, also leading to the removal out of the BEL 20 index, which has a silver lining, I just learned, because we have now a new award for best small and mid-cap. So there is an advantage after all. But I guess the reality is, when you go to an important transformation as a company, as we are doing at the Telenet side, we have sold our mobile towers, we are reinvesting it in the cable network, and that will create a new investment cycle, so it will depress cash flows for a number of years. So clearly we have taken a long-term investment view, which obviously does not always go hand in hand with somewhat a shorter-term view of the financial markets. So therefore I'm very much pleased with the support that we get from the analysts when we try to explain our strategic story and when we try to convince them of the trajectory we're on. At the same time, I think also, maybe Geoffroy, you can testify together with the rest of your team, winning this award is not just about personal recognition, it's much about a team effort. So I would also like to thank my colleague Bart, who is working closely with me on the AR side. He's not here today because he is at an investor conference as we speak. But also the rest of the finance team. I'm pretty sure that without their help and their commitment, I would not be standing here. When I speak to analysts on some things, they appreciate the way we report results. It's about being transparent. We have a dedicated toolkit with a lot of Excel data on the website. We have the consensus on the website that was also recommended. And we also have in the company, it's a bit of a joke, we call it the Chief Rebasement Officer. What does this Chief Rebasement Officer actually do? Well, every time we make an acquisition, we restate the past year results so that investors and analysts can assess the results on a like-for-like basis. And I think that is also clearly something that people value. But therefore, of course, I need some input and reliance from the rest of the finance organization. Maybe to conclude, there is maybe one thing I have to do right, which is to invite all of you, maybe in about a year from now, to Mechelen, to Telenet offices, where we can then celebrate next year's award ceremony. So thanks a lot for your support and have a great rest of the night. Thank you.
Before I give the word back to Johan for some final remarks, I remember it was more than 10 years ago that someone said, yes, it's always nice to have this event and to have this award, but it's always the company with the best share price performance that is among the winners. And I was thinking, reflecting upon this when I saw this list. And also winners of the other awards. Some of them really had or having a rough time on the stock market today, so you're not alone, Rob. Sorry for that remark. No, you're not alone, but it proves that even or maybe especially when markets are a bit rough, that it's crucial to communicate well with the financial community. And I'm sure, and I know that this is what you have been doing, again, not you alone, but many other companies as well in the past months. So thank you, Rob, and the final words to Johan.
Ladies and gentlemen, also from my side, a warm congratulations to all winners for 2022. It's indeed a remarkable effort and an inspiring example despite the market conditions. To our analyst who was voting for a digital session, well, we do have our cocktail dinner afterwards in the Maison. I think it's a proof that there are some advantages also of physical meetings. And that said, at the same occasion, I do want to thank once and last time our host Solvay, their IR team and the production staff for the welcoming and the contribution in organizing another great event. And gratitude also to our long-term sponsors, Belier and Fabelfin Academy, whose contributions also help us continue our award activities. And lastly, thank you all for being present, all our members, financial analyst community, for your continued support. It is great to having you all with us tonight, and we hope to see each other again next year. I have now the pleasure to invite you to the cocktail dinner. As said, it's next door. You can leave the laboratory by the way you entered, but I would like to ask specifically all winners to stay behind, because a digital version of your photo is very hard to obtain if you're in the other room. Thank you, and have a great evening.